Welcome back to the Budding Author podcast with me, Simon Ward, your host. Hope everyone is fine out there. Today, I'm talking to Greg Sharp. Hi, Greg. Oops. I completely messed that up. I am all over the shop. Greg Sharp, yes, voice actor from Werewolf the Podcast. So many voices galore. Also, yes. Greg has recently won Michelle Cobbetts competition with Kill and Cure. Yes. So quite a lot to talk about to pad in there. But we talked just before we went on air. You're not a full-time writer, and you've got quite a busy job, haven't you, Greg?
I do, yeah. I'm a pre-sales director for a business services and outsourcing firm. We're a global corporation. And I look after all the pre-sales in our Workday market, our Workday line of business across Europe.
So how do you find time to write?
Yeah, every little corner I can squeeze myself into. The story goes that pre-pandemic, I used to commute in and out of the city of London on a daily basis, and I was spending 3.5 hours a day getting to and from work. When the pandemic came along, I repurposed a significant amount of that time. And before I knew it, a book I'd had a crack at writing 10 years previously suddenly magically got finished. Yeah. Quite productive early morning, actually. This is the clue for me. As a young man, I was rubbish in the mornings, but it seems that this side of 50, I can hit the ground running quite hard. So I've written 2 novels, both of which have been, broadly speaking, written early doors before work, before the day job takes up all the capacity.
Now this is a slightly off subject thing. Post 50, I've just slipped past 50, as you might guess, or not guess. I don't know. Your energy levels are not quite the same, are they? I think when you finish work, when you've done a full-time job, when you finish work, you don't really want to be starting anything. Is that the same for you?
So I probably sleep better now than I did when I was younger and at different times, right? So when I was a young man, so let's say when I was a bachelor, I'd go to bed quite late and I'd find it very, very difficult to get up in the mornings. And I was not good first thing in the morning. Now I tend to go to bed a bit earlier and I get up earlier, but also when I get up, I feel fresher. Yeah. Now I hear what you're saying about the batteries aren't quite the same caliber that they used to be. So I run out of energy in the evening at a point earlier than I might have done previously. But I do find that my most productive time of day is earlier in the day. I used to hate the mornings, but I'm quite good at them now.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of probably more of a morning guy, really. Maybe not too mega early in the morning, because I'm sort of trying to retire. So I'm trying to have a lie-in occasionally. But I mean, generally 6:30, we're sort of getting up and about and that sort of stuff. And it is good to sort of attack things early on, isn't it? The creative process first thing in the morning. I think before you've eaten, the mind is sometimes sharper, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I often have dreams that inspire my creative work as well. And if I don't do something with them before I eat, then they tend to be turned from dreams into history very quickly.
Ah, got you. So I can remember that I was on one consultancy gig and I was working over there, staying over, and I'll wake up in the night and with an idea. So I've got a Post-its at the side of my bed, sort of thing, with different ideas that came to me. It's amazing when those stories come to you. For me, quite often in the shower, solutions to problems come to me in the shower. But it's strange how the creative mind sort of awakens and gets us going. Where did you get the idea from Kill and Cure? That's not somebody you've put right in it or anything.
Yeah, well, Kill and Cure is technically speaking, it's a sequel. So it's the second book in a series. Although you could read it as a standalone novel, because it's got a distinct beginning, middle, and an end of its own. But it's essentially the story of a chap called Charlie Mortimer, who is an unwilling werewolf. So he's been cursed.
Unwilling werewolf, I like that.
Yep, he's been cursed, and he's being sort of tempted by this curse. It's doing everything it can to persuade him that it's a good thing to be a werewolf, and he's being told by some learned friends of his that if he leaves it long enough, he will simply turn into a serial killer and everyone will die. So he probably needs to do something about it before it all goes disastrously wrong. And the story of Kill and Cure is about his pursuit of that cure and all the stuff that happens around it. It doesn't all go according to plan, of course.
So the first one, Il Lupo, when you started writing that, did you plot that out, or you're more of a pantser?
Yeah, the planner versus pantser. So I'm a bit of a hybrid. So I tend to sketch an outline. Well, I start off with a premise, and then I've got a rough idea where it's going to start and where it's going to finish. And I think, oh, okay, now I know where it's going to start and finish. What sort of route will it take to get there? And I might actually even go to the point of sketching out, broadly speaking, what I might want to happen in the chapters. And I did with Il Lupo. And then I, radically ignored all that. And I got from the beginning to the end in a very different way.
Yeah.
And in fact, something I did quite late in that process was I took the middle of that story and I removed it and I plopped it down at the beginning. And I described what was going on in the middle of this story.
Kind of action, yeah.
Yeah. And then what had been the first half of it sort of became the second segment, if you like. The premise at the beginning of that first bit was like, there's all this stuff going on here. And at the end of it, you're like, okay, I understand there is some bad stuff afoot, but how did we get here? So then I go about telling you how we got here. And then the final part of the book is, well, what do we do about it?
Yeah, that's the perfect setup, really. I think I've talked to several authors recently about the importance of gaining traction and getting people's attention. Now, whilst the start of the story in reality is setting the scene, quite often that's not going to grab the reader. So we need to start with some action and really get into it to sort of get them involved in the story before we dig that out. Did you always think that Kill and Cure was going to be a second novel, or did you try and fit it in and then run out of space, or what?
No, Il Lupo was a story I wanted to tell end to end in its own right, and I told the story that I wanted to tell, but it was always going to be left with some open threads. That was collateral damage in the telling of that story. There was always going to be some bits left open, and before I finished writing it, I was like, I've got to take this a bit further. I've got to explore that part of it and that part of it, and I've left several hints and clues in the late stages of Il Lupo about things that people discover in Kill and Cure. And anyone who's read the first book, first may recognize some of that. Anyone who hasn't, if they were to go back and read the first book, although they'd know a lot of the stuff that goes on in it by virtue of having read the second one, they ought to have a whole bunch of light bulb moments as well.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from.
Little sort of these little Easter egg sort of things that sort of put in there. I think from my perspective, my first novel, it was gonna Finding Love in 2045, sort of sci-fi romantic drama. It was heading for about 100,000 words, so I had to sort of do a cross, because for the first novel it was way too long. So then I split it up between that and Awoken, and as much as we tried to stick to one genre, that is particularly difficult, particularly for me. So with the Finding Love in 2045 is like a sci-fi romance, and then the second one is like a sci-fi thriller, Awoken. And then I did a prequel to sort of tie in with that. Time to Click, which is more of a psychological thriller, come sci-fi thriller. So it's sort of all packaged, all jumps about there. Sticking to genre is quite difficult, isn't it, Greg? Don't you think?
Yep. I think it is. I'm currently writing a novel that's in a completely different genre, as a matter of fact. So I've written 2 short stories and 2 novels, and they're all sort of supernatural, paranormal type affairs. But I'm midway through writing a novel that's based in the southeast of the United States in the 1970s, and gangland culture, nightclubs, love, loss, revenge, and discos.
That's a lot of research for that, surely.
Yeah. Well, yes, and I remember the 70s, so
unless you're involved in the gangland culture, of course.
Yeah, that bit I had to research a little bit. Although, having said that, spoiler alert, it is a work of fiction, right? So this is not about the real gangs of the 1970s in the southeast of the United States. It's about some imagined gangs.
We've got to be careful with our search history, haven't we? Because for one of mine, I was looking at how long it takes a body to decompose. So when you're searching, when you're looking up down the search history, in Time to Click, it was like, how long would that take, and what sort of the process? So finding out in detail the actual decomposition process, worms and all. It's quite gory stuff, really.
Yeah, you're probably appearing on a radar somewhere, you know.
I was going to say, I think you got to be careful what you're doing next, haven't you? After that, you go, But then in another one, I was looking at sort of bridesmaid and wedding sort of stuff. So maybe if somebody connecting the two of those, I don't know, that might have been a whole new world. What's your biggest challenge at the minute, I think, other than finding time to write?
Yeah, finding time to write probably is the single biggest challenge. And I guess, as an indie author, it's the ongoing challenge that you face trying to reach a wider audience, trying to get connected with a broader market, and that sort of thing. Because whilst work takes up the biggest chunk of my waking day, and I have a life as well, and I try to write, and I'm voice acting on Werewolf the podcast, you've got to try and market your book as well, your work too. Otherwise, literally nobody's going to read it. So that takes a significant amount of effort. There's no budget for that. I don't have thousands of US dollars tucked away for a marketing consultancy. I have to do that stuff myself as indie authors do. So that's a challenge.
I think it helps the fact that you're working as well. So you've got like a money flow. For people who are trying to do this full time, that's sort of a very difficult game. But helping gain traction and getting your name out there, entering competitions such as Michelle Cobbetts competition that you won recently.
Yes.
That's a good way to gain feedback from people as well as gaining traction. Is that the only competition you've gone for, or is it something that you do a lot of?
It's not. I'm in the Best Indie Book Awards this year with Kill and Cure, which is a global indie book awards contest. So I'm looking forward to getting feedback on that one later this year. Got through a couple of rounds of the Best Indie Novel of the Year award. I think it was last year with Il Lupo. So I enter a few. Not again. These things often come with a price tag as well, and I don't have hundreds and hundreds of pounds to spend on entering literary contests.
It feels a bit strange to have to pay to enter a competition.
Yeah.
It feels a bit like one of those sort of on the TV where there's an easy question like, who sang Careless Whisper? Was it A, George Michael, B, Whitney Houston, or C, Michael Jackson? It's just £3 entry fee.
£3 to enter, and then you phone up, and under the pressure of the moment, you go, Jackson.
Yeah, well, I think Jackson had a part in that song. Yeah, that's it. It is difficult. It is difficult. Did you not want to go down the traditional publishing route?
I explored it, and I may yet take that turn once again. I explored it with Il Lupo. it was a period in time when everybody had just written their first novel. You know, we were post-pandemic, and it did seem that I probably wasn't fitting the bill of what most publishing houses were looking for a first novelist at that point in time, you know, demographically, let's just say.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it, I understand where you're going with that, but maybe if you'd got 1 million followers, maybe they'd have signed you up.
Yeah, but we're on our way. We're on our way. So, I mean, I started this journey 18 months ago, thereabouts, with 150 contacts on Twitter, and that's 20,000 now. So we're heading in the right direction.
You're doing very well with that. You're doing very well. Mine's creeping up slowly. I'm particularly lazy with social media. That's probably why I'm nowhere near that. You're probably much more organized than I am.
Yeah, probably. I'm probably quite organized with it. Yeah. I'm not. I don't know if I'm more organized than you, but I'm quite organized.
Or maybe I'm sort of covering a lot of bases as well. That'd be my excuse, I guess. The Werewolf the podcast. So tell me about that.
So a good friend of mine, Fenrir Thorvaldsen, who is a werewolf fan.
I thought you were just going to say he was a werewolf then.
Well, he
could be.
A lot of people seem to think he is. And so this is his podcast. It's a weekly serial drama that's put out through podcasting platforms. It's like an audio book, a chapter a week. And well, when Il Lupo came out, I became a listener to the show. And through social media, Fen and I became acquainted. And the next thing you know, he was asking me if I would consider bringing one of my characters from Il Lupo to do a guest appearance in a story that he was telling. And would I mind acting the part?
Oh.
So
was that a new thing for you?
It was a new thing. I'd done acting as a kid. So there'd always been an element of theatre about me, I suppose, one way or another. So it was something I couldn't resist. So we did a one-off, and I did a series of podcasts that summer, 2023, in which we did sort of chats by the fireside about. We did 5 1-hour episodes about werewolves. And when that got finished, he's like, "I want you back on Werewolf the podcast. I've got a new character I'm coming up with, but I don't know anything about him. Can you help me create him? And can you act him?" And well, it's 18 months later, and I'm now several characters, and I've written a number of episodes, and I help out where I can most weeks with consulting and supporting Fen in the writing part of it.
And about 80,000 views or downloads this year.
Yeah. That's probably closer to 90 actually. I think that was last month. So yeah, I mean, it got into the top 5% in the world in podcasts last week.
Maybe I should bring a werewolf into my stories.
Well, they're very popular, you know.
Well, the one that's popular, let's say, you've probably heard of the J.R. Ward books, haven't you?
Yes.
The Black Dagger Brotherhood. They're very saucy, aren't they? Are you going to the saucy level with them, or is it more?
Do you know, that's not really my cup of tea, if I'm honest. Call me. I'm kind of an old-fashioned classic horror kind of a guy. So it's the suspense, it's the thrill, the real life that we get into in my books is more about sort of the stresses of modern living, mental health, that sort of thing. I don't really delve to. I get a little bit into flirtation and will they, won't they, and there's quite a nice scene of farce in Il Lupo where some people come around to visit one of the chaps, and he comes out from the kitchen. He's got 2 champagne glasses and a bottle in his hand, and he's in his dressing gown. And he's like, "Oh, this is a bit awkward. You're early." And one of them's like, "Well, it's okay. I'm not thirsty, thanks." And then, of course, a female voice comes rolling down the stairs saying, "Are you gonna be long?" But that's about as saucy as I go with it, right? So a bit more tongue in cheek.
Nah, it's a difficult area to cover, isn't it? I think the writing perspective, sort of writing a male role and a female role, obviously from a male role, writing a male character is nice and easy, but a female character sort of brings different challenges. And likewise for a females doing male characters, they all end up being a bit sort of in a box, don't they, if you're not careful.
That's the risk for sure.
Yeah. So what's your guilty pleasure? What do you find time to do then? Because you're a very busy guy by the sound of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I walk my dog most days. We have the help of a dog walker too, which gives me time some mornings to make sure I dedicate to writing. I play golf every Sunday morning. I'm a golf nut. Guilty as charged pleasure.
Golf. Now that is a game I've played a bit of golf, but I'm sure you're far better than I am. Golf and snooker is my snooker's my I think my game I'm trying to improve at.
That's not an easy game. You know, a lot of us grew up playing pool, and then you try and get onto a 12x6 table, and it's enormous.
Yeah, you can have everything aligned. So yeah, I've got this game licked now, and then the following time you go, you can't pot anything. But when you look technically at what's required to pot a ball, you're knocking a round object onto another round object so precisely. It's a wonder you never ever pot anything ever. Which there are days when I don't.
Know the feeling.
Back to the writing. People at work, how do they know about your writing? How do they?
Do.
What's their impression of your writing? Are they big champions of yours?
Well, they're very kind about it to my face, you know. So I do have a number of colleagues who have been kind enough to buy my novels, and certainly there are one or two for whom it happens to be a genre that they enjoy prior to me writing in it. And I've had some very lovely feedback and some very rewarding conversations with some colleagues at work who are constantly nudging me and telling me to get the next one done. So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, don't get any more deals. Get back to writing. That's it.
Get back to writing, you.
So what's next for you then?
Yeah, so next I've got this this thriller that I'm writing, and after that I do have a number of next projects. So within the world of the werewolf, there will be at least a third in that series. You mentioned prequels earlier. Yeah. I've got maybe 2 that I want to write, but they would be novellas, so they'd be a little shorter. Lupo's 160,000 words. Killing Cure's 130 something. You know, these are quite substantial.
That's very long for a first novel. Very long for a first novel. I was heading for 100,000, and I sort of pulled it back.
Yeah. 160,000. It was a little longer than I intended. In fact, it was quite tempting. When I was in the process of pulling the middle bit out and putting it at the beginning, I very nearly chopped it in half completely, and it could easily have been done. Now, for anyone who reads the book, it is in 2 pretty distinct halves. It's all about what happened before and what happens after. So it can be read in 2 parts.
But as we mentioned, the immediate res, you've got to sort of get into the action, and if you add that in one book and then none in the other book, then the other book's not going to have the same flow,
the same pizzazz. Yeah. So yes,
well,
novellas. So those prequels will be shorter, and then there's 1 or 2 spin-offs that I want to do about a couple of the characters within the world. So there's a bunch of stuff I want to do within that genre. Currently in the process of converting a 38 episode sequence of shows from Werewolf the Podcast into a novel that Fenrir and I are going to release together as joint authors. So I'm looking forward to that. And I also have a novel I want to write based on some ancient mythological teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's some stories emerging around that I want to use to inspire some stuff that would happen in the modern setting. and a sort of man meeting somebody who might be more than he appears to be in a deity sense of the word, rather than a sort of monster sense of the word.
When you're talking about the finite detail within the story, the action scenes, how graphic are you going with that? Are you holding off from strong graphic content, or?
So I thought I was pretty graphic. I thought I was pretty graphic until I started to see some of the stuff that other people have been putting out recently. So no, I don't go full on into it. So my books are much more about the suspense and the fear of what's about to happen than they are about the happening. So I do action sequence in the style of a kind of action thriller or an action drama. There is a bit of blood and gore, but it's by no means, splatterpunk or anything like that.
Gratuitous. No,
it's not really gratuitous. I'll describe somebody who will have an injury. I'll describe the blood flowing from a cut or something like that, and the pain they feel. But it would have been much. The thrill or the excitement or the adrenaline would definitely come much more from the, oh God, that's about to happen, isn't it? And then bang, it does. So that for me, the bang has to be quite quick. I don't want to spend 3 paragraphs getting into the wound.
Yeah, getting into the build up towards it, and the as you say, building the tension. Yes. Now, that's good quality writing. It's easy to just go into the blood spilling elements.
Yes. In fact, I quite like the idea of barely showing the violence at all, and just leaving it to the imagination. So what's happened.
Yeah.
Right. Because
it's building up. There's one particular scene in Time to Click, which was the prequel I did. There's a short story, Time to Click, that I entered into a competition. I was finalist for a competition for this short story, which, as I say, moving on a couple of years, I looked at it and I can see why I didn't win, because it wasn't great. But as your writing develops, your opinion of your previous writing obviously changes. But we need to step forward with confidence. But with Time to Click, there's one particular scene in that there's such a tense build up, but then we also go for the graphic elements as well. So it's all the madness unfolding, and it's the will they won't they, not from a lovemaking perspective, but from a horror.
From a horror perspective.
Yeah. So
I mean, something I like to do in the build up to mine is I often like to, the way I describe it to myself is I brick my character up behind a brick wall.
Yeah.
How the hell are they going to get out of here?
Yeah.
And then, they find a way out, or something unexpected happens, or there's a twist. But the build up has to be around, I think I know what's going to happen here, and it's not going to be good. And then actually something else happens and catches you out.
Oh, twists are so much fun, aren't they? I think when I wrote Finding Love in 2045, I won't sort of give too much away for people who haven't read it yet, but there's a sort of a double stroke, triple twist in it that catches a lot of people out. But the cringy one in Time to Click is where people reading. I had a review recently, and the guy said he had to stop reading because it was affecting him so much. He had to go and take a break.
Wow.
But and then he could uncross his legs and continue reading. So, but
deep breaths later. Yeah.
That's Time to Click. I've got a local was it meet and greet, sort of a book signing for Time to Click that I'm doing in Dudley on the 24th of October. So I'm looking forward to that, which will probably be after this has gone out, to be honest. But Greg, that's been fantastic. You are definitely a star on the rise, and it's been a pleasure to have spent some time chatting with you.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very grateful.
Cheers, Greg. Anytime, mate. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks for listening.